This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
Cabinet Minister Isaac Herzog said today that Hezbollah has already fired more than 1,600 missiles at Israeli targets. Joining me now live from the war zone is IBA's Viva Press. Viva, a relatively quiet day today in the north compared to yesterday's massive and deadly attacks. What's the latest?
Indeed, Yochanan, it has been quite quiet here in terms of what has been going on the last couple of days. Of course, there were sirens heard throughout Haifa and the Galilee today. Rockets also landed in Tiberias, Carmiel, and the Galilee, but nobody was hurt. The truth of the matter is people here are antsy. They want to get their life back on track. Haifa Mayor Yona Yahav said that he wants his city back on track. He ordered the libraries be open today. They put up some 10,000 flags throughout the city to boost morale. Banks have been told to stay open at later hours so people can get their errands done. The Technion is set to open on Sunday, and the libraries, as I said, are open. People just want to get their lives back on track. Of course, they're still on alert. Let's just move to Nazareth quickly, where the residents there are still angry about last night's attack that killed two brothers, Ravia and Mahmoud Talouzi, ages 3 and 7. They were playing soccer in an alleyway near their house. A Katyusha landed, killing them both. The funerals were held last night, and the residents are saying that there was no siren, no information in Arabic what to do. They didn't know that they had to go inside their house. Today, Home Front Command Major General Itzhak Gershon met with Nazareth Mayor Ramez Jaresi about these problems. From today onwards, there will be announcements from the Home Front Command in Arabic. As for the shelters, Major General Itzhak Gershon said it is Israeli law that every person builds their own bomb shelter in a building. He said the Nazareth buildings are sturdy enough that it is not necessary to build a shelter there. Let's just hope that the tragedy does not get repeated.
Back now to the war in Lebanon, and this is what Tourism Minister Isaac Herzog, a member of the Security Cabinet, had to say about the ongoing operation there.
We have as much time as possible. We've instructed the army to complete the operation, to do it as focused as possible, to hurt on military or infrastructure which aids terror. We will try as much as possible to mitigate damages to civilians. The commanders on the ground and the infrastructure on the ground of the Hezbollah is being hurt considerably. This does not mean that you will not see new other peaks that may happen again, or sirens or missiles. It's not over yet. It is painful. There are tragedies. We're really sorry for it. We are not shooting sporadically, not at hospitals that were shot here in the Galilee, not at kids who are walking in the street. We are warning people in advance. There are tragedies, clearly. I used to be the...
Some analysts are beginning to question the effectiveness of the IDF operation in Lebanon, wondering out loud why, after 9 days of massive Israeli shelling, Hezbollah is still able to fire hundreds of rockets and clash with IDF soldiers along the border. However, strategic and Arab affairs expert Professor Gerald Steinberg told IBA's Leah Zinder that so far the IDF operation is proceeding exactly according to schedule.
This was mapped out and very carefully thought out. It's been for 2 or 3 years already as a 3-week campaign. In fact, I think most military experts, people who had been involved in the planning, had expected a lot more missile firing, long-range missiles, perhaps in Tel Aviv, a lot more damage. Yes, there are 14,000, 16,000 perhaps different types of missiles and rockets from Iran sitting in Lebanon. And only a few thousand have been used, a few thousand have been destroyed. The critical week is this week. Saying it's bogged down is simply missing the big picture.
Do you think it will be possible to achieve the goals outlined by the Israeli government, that is, virtually eliminating the Hezbollah threat without a ground operation of massive proportion?
I think that's exactly what the military and the political leadership is now trying to decide, because a ground operation will be costly. The whole area is mined. There are going to be individuals with anti-tank missiles. We've seen some tragic deaths of soldiers already the last couple of days through this process. That is going to be painful. So the question is what else can be done? And I think a lot depends on the diplomacy. In the case of the NATO attack against Serbia a few years ago, it was all accomplished on the air rather. It was the only case where we have a decisive victory from the air, because there was a political leadership in Serbia that said, this is enough, we are now going to accept the terms. There may not be a political leadership in Hezbollah that's capable of doing this. The Lebanese government may be too weak. The question is whether Iran and Syria will now say to the Lebanese, to their own people, we have to stop this, we have to return this kidnapped soldiers, we have to step here and make sure that Hezbollah doesn't start another war like this. It's too early to know, and of course Europe plays a critical role in this process.
What will it take to get Syria and Iran to the point where they are ready to pressure Hezbollah?
Certainly the role of Europe, the United Nations, and of course the United States, which is already involved in this, is critical here. Will Europe say complete sanctions on Iran and Syria if they send any more weapons to Hezbollah? Will European buffer zone troops enforce a boycott, a refusal to allow transport of weapons so Hezbollah can rebuild itself? Will Europe finally declare Hezbollah as a terrorist organization, not allow them to collect money to broadcast Al-Manar television? Will they stop them from rebuilding their capability? That's the critical question here.
Demonstrations against the Israeli attacks on Lebanon have continued. A number of cities, especially in the United States, witnessed massive protests condemning the open Israeli war on Lebanon and supporting the Lebanese people and their tenacity.
من نيويورك وواشنطن إلى القاهرة واليمن مرور.
In New York, Washington, Cairo, Athens, and Yemen, thousands of demonstrators condemned the Israeli crimes in Lebanon and expressed their solidarity with the Lebanese people who are suffering from Israeli bombardment. In New York City, hundreds of Arab and Jewish Americans held a protest in front of the UN building condemning Israeli aggression. The demonstrators, who participated after being invited by the Arab American Anti-Discrimination Committee, chanted slogans demanding an end to Israel's assault on Lebanon and freedom for Palestine. They carried signs that read, "Stop supporting the Israeli killing machine."
My family in Lebanon is under attack by Israeli warplanes. None of the Arab leaders are saying anything. We want the people to mobilize. First, we want the bombing of Lebanon and Gaza to stop, and then negotiations can start. So the first thing is to stop the bombing, and the second thing is to provide assistance to the people. Then we can have negotiations.
We're here to show that Jewish people don't support these actions by Israel. We've been against the state of Israel since the day it was established, going back 50-odd years, and even before that. Jews did live in peace with Arabs. What's happening today is caused by Zionist politicians.
What do you say? How many kids have you killed today?
ومن نيويورك إلى واشنطن حيث تظاهر نحو
From New York to Washington, nearly 100,000 Americans, some of Arab origins, protested in front of the White House, carrying Lebanese and Palestinian flags. The demonstrators called for immediate intervention by American President George Bush, the U.S. Congress, and the international community to end Israel's open assaults on Lebanon. They held up a picture of a young girl who was killed in an Israeli raid. Written beneath the picture were the words, "Where is her right to live?" An allusion to President Bush's remark that Israel has a right to defend itself. As in U.S. cities, thousands demonstrated in Cairo, Sana'a, Khartoum, and other Arabic and Islamic cities. The demonstrators expressed their anger toward the continuous Israeli crimes in Lebanon and Palestine. They called on Arabic countries and the international community to stop the flow of blood in Lebanon and Palestine. The scene was repeated in the Greek capital, Athens, where more than 2,000 people took to the streets to condemn the Israeli assaults and express their solidarity with the Lebanese and Palestinian causes. The demonstrators roamed the streets before heading towards the Israeli and American embassies. 500,000 Lebanese are facing difficult conditions after they fled their homes in the south, the suburbs, and the Bekaa Valley as a result of the continued Israeli aggression on Lebanon. This aggression caused thousands of families to flee schools, public institutions, and open fields under difficult conditions. Humanitarian agencies have been unable to accommodate this huge influx of people.
These people did not come here to finish their studies. They fled to escape Israeli brutality and massacre. They came from the south and the suburbs. More than 500,000 refugees left their homes and jobs with only the clothes on their back. Some of them even came walking, barefoot. Women, children, senior citizens, and sick people are living tragic conditions, as one can tell from these images. All of a sudden, they realize they have lost everything.
الذي يعيشه هؤلاء وقد وجدوا أنفسهم فجأة أنهم خسروا كل شيء.
قاعدين 5-6 عيال بهيدي الغرفة.
About 5 or 6 families are staying in this room. The first 2 or 3 days, we didn't receive any help. In the past 2 days, we received some assistance from an agency. Only yesterday we got medicine. We fled and came here. There's no one. We don't feel that anyone cares. We want to go see our homes, but we cannot. We came without anything. We didn't bring anything from our homes. We don't know what's going on.
The family of Ali Zainuddin left their home near the airport as Israeli warplanes were destroying part of their house and making their futures uncertain. Al-Haj Ali, who suffers from chronic illness, is finding it difficult to obtain medicine.
A team of doctors came and examined us. We felt a little better. We went to get our medicine, but they said you can't get it until the end of the month. So if someone is sick, what can he do? I have diabetes and I cannot even stand.
Hussein, whose house was totally destroyed in the southern suburbs, appeared perplexed about his family's future, especially because he does not have any other place to go.
We were at home and then the house started to collapse. Thank God my wife was not killed. The entire house collapsed to the ground. We have been here for about a week. There is complete destruction.
The Saniyye garden in the Hamra area has become a place of shelter for dozens of families who use these dry weeds as their beds and little else to protect them. Humanitarian agencies are unable to address this crisis. Thousands of displaced civilians whose homes and villages have been destroyed in the Bekaa, south and southern Beirut suburbs sleep here with no shelter. Every day they look for food. The burning question is, who will compensate these people? For Al-Madar, Caroline Bayani, Abu Dhabi TV, Beirut.
As Lebanon reeled under the 9th day of Israeli attacks, the exodus of thousands of foreign nationals from the country gathered pace today as an international flotilla of warships converged on Beirut to evacuate refugees. A token force of U.S. Marines who landed in Lebanon were busy transferring U.S. citizens to Dhabi port to the east of the capital. Some 3,000 U.S. nationals were expected to be evacuated by today. France, trying to evacuate a total of about 8,000 of its citizens by sea, arranged for some 550 French and other European nationals to embark from the battered southern port of Tyre. The UN has chartered a Cypriot ferry, the Serenade, to evacuate staff and families. Hundreds more foreigners were fleeing in buses and cars overland to the Syrian capital of Damascus, braving Israeli bombings of the road leading to the border with Syria. Philippines said it was considering chartering a ship to take people to Greece or Cyprus, has an estimated 34,000 nationals working in Lebanon. 6 ships, including 2 aircraft carriers, are standing by to evacuate around 5,000 Britons. Beirut port officials said more than 75,000 people had already left.
The Maronite Patriarch Cardinal Mar Nasrallah Butros Sfeer, who returned from the United States on a helicopter belonging to the U.S. Embassy in Ankara, announced that American officials are concerned about Lebanon and are eager for a ceasefire under reasonable conditions.
The first wave of Marines landed at the American embassy in a car on Thursday morning. The American helicopter was carrying our symbol, our Maronite Patriarch Mar Nasrallah Butros Sfeer and his accompanying delegation. He traveled from the Okrotie military airport in Cyprus to Beirut. His trip lasted about 1 hour and 15 minutes. The U.S. State Department coordinated with its embassies in Lebanon and Cyprus to return the cardinal safely to his country. The Maronite Patriarch was away for 20 days visiting his community in America to commemorate the 40th anniversary of the establishment of a Maronite Patriarchate in the United States. The events taking place in Lebanon transformed this trip into a political visit during which Patriarch Sfeer monitored hour by hour what is happening in Lebanon. He called for reason and wisdom over extremism and emotion, asking God to guide all officials to end the Lebanese tragedy that has been occurring again and again. The U.S. Ambassador Jeffrey Feltman welcomed Cardinal Sfeer when he arrived on the landing area at the U.S. Embassy. The Minister of Justice, Charles Rizik, also attended at the invitation of the U.S. Ambassador. While Sfeer was heading to Albuquerque, Lebanese Americans boarded the same helicopter in order not to interrupt the continual airlift out of Lebanon. A crowd of greeters welcomed Sfeer to the Patriarchate in Albuquerque before he went to the Sari Church to hold a mass where he gave a speech about his efforts in America.
We presented our position to the United States, to the Vice President and the Secretary of State. The officials in that country confirmed their concern about what is happening in Lebanon and are eager to end this conflict with a ceasefire under reasonable and acceptable conditions. The cardinals we met in the United States were overcome with sadness because of what's happening in Lebanon.
Among the greeters were ministers and parliamentary members as well as religious and political activists. The Patriarch held a series of talks calling for an emergency meeting at the Patriarchate Council and Maronite bishops at 9:30 on Friday morning.
The war waged by Israel on Lebanon for the kidnapping of 2 Israeli soldiers has raised the issue of Jordanian prisoners in Israel and the hopes of the families of these prisoners. 25 Jordanian citizens are held in Israeli prisons and a comparable number are missing.
Hours, days, months, and years go by. 16 years have passed, and the young boy Sultan has yet to return home. He was 15 years old when he crossed the barbed wire fence separating Israel and Jordan to kill an Israeli soldier. He wanted to avenge the martyrs who died in the Al-Aqsa Mosque massacre in 1990. The mother looks at her grandson, Sultan, who was born after the arrest of his uncle and now has grown into a young man. Her husband wishes to at least hear the voice of his son after he lost his sight a year ago. Peace with Israel enabled the family to visit their son. He spent half his life behind bars. This is what turned him into the oldest Jordanian prisoner next to Samir Kintar, the oldest Lebanese prisoner. The plight of 25 missing citizens has not revoked the peace treaty, though it put diplomatic efforts to the test.
The prisoners were released after peace. It was war. He was a young boy and he was sick. There's no reason to be vindictive towards him to this degree. They talk about peace. What peace? Peace is far away. Your government and our government are both evil.
The conversation the mother had with the prisoner ward, where her son is held, came at a time when the prisoner's file was reopened. The Israelis insisted that they will only agree to a prisoner exchange. This is why Mossad agents who tried to assassinate Hamas leader Khaled Mashal were released by Jordan in exchange for releasing the founder of Hamas, the martyred Sheikh Ahmed Yassin, in addition to securing the antidote for the poison injected in Mashal and releasing all Jordanian prisoners.
I started banging on the door, shouting, "My dear son, my dear son." They asked me, "What's happening to you, mother? Are you going crazy?" I said, "Sultan is about to get out. Sultan is getting out." My children told me to calm down and started crying tears of joy.
Israeli deception continued during the latest exchange with Hezbollah. They said that the prisoners would not be released as a gift to a party that Israel described as terrorist, but to a government that engages in genuine diplomatic efforts. The gift was an illusion. Those released either already served their time or their cases were not security related.
The Jordanian government needs to learn a lesson from the enemy. We are watching right now the Zionists destroying an Arab country for 2 captured soldiers.
A house that has been built for Sultan in the hope that he will return. It's a hope shared by 30 Jordanian families, anticipating the return of their sons. Sultan has not lived in the house built for him. He is still in Israel, despite the signing of the peace treaty with Jordan and the agreements that followed regarding prisoner exchange. Yasser Abdu Hilalal, Al Jazeera, Jordan.
UN Secretary General Kofi Annan on Thursday called for an immediate end to hostilities between Israel and Lebanon to prevent further loss of innocent life and the infliction of further suffering.
Annan told the UN Security Council a quick end to the fighting also would allow aid workers to reach those in need.
First, to prevent further loss of innocent life and the infliction of further suffering. Second, to allow full humanitarian access to those in need. And third, to give diplomacy a chance to work out a practical package of actions that would provide a lasting solution to the current crisis.
UN Secretary General then said, quote, Israel has confirmed that its operation in Lebanon has wider and far-reaching goals than the return of its captured forces, unquote. Annan added Israel's operations are doing little or nothing to decrease popular support for Hezbollah in Lebanon or the region, but are doing a great deal to weaken the government of Lebanon. Elsewhere in his address, Annan offered a number of proposals to be carried out to end the Middle East crisis, among them an expanded peacekeeping force to be established on the Lebanese side of its border with Israel, working with the Beirut government to strengthen its army, and an international conference to settle Lebanon's international borders with Syria and with Israel, including the disputed Sheba Farms area.
Day 9 of relentless Israeli aggression saw on Thursday Zionist ground troops get locked in fierce fighting with Hezbollah fighters after launching a new cross-border incursion into the Lebanese territory.
3 of Israeli forces were wounded, 2 when an anti-tank rocket was fired at a vehicle north of Avivim, and the 3rd injured by gunfire. Hezbollah said in a statement that its members have destroyed 2 tanks in the ongoing fighting. The resistant group also targeted Saf, Karmail, Tabaria and Naharia in northern occupied Palestine, taking a heavy toll on Zionist troops and infrastructure. This comes as Zionist troops battled Lebanese militants, and warplanes bombed a shelter believed to be a Hezbollah bunker on Thursday, as Lebanon issued a plea for international help after the bloodiest day of the conflict. Israeli warplanes dropped 20 tons of bombs on a suspected Hezbollah leadership bunker in south of Beirut, but Hezbollah denied that and said the building hit was a mosque under construction. Israel's strikes on Lebanon have inflicted several $1 billion worth of damage in just 9 days, dealing a heavy blow to the economy, but Lebanese finance minister insisted the country's finances will survive. Meanwhile, Israel has vowed intensive war against Hezbollah would go on as long as it deemed necessary. It comes as international appeals mounted for a rapid ceasefire in Lebanon, with Russia warning of a humanitarian catastrophe in the making, and the UN Security Council set to meet to etch a way forward.
A
new Israeli raid launched moments ago by a surveillance plane on the Saida area killed Ismail Nazmi Rayan. Later in the afternoon, the young girl Fadwa al-Arouki was martyred from wounds sustained last night with her mother, who was also martyred due to Israeli shelling of the Maghazi refugee camp. Yasser Muhammad Abdul Lidda was also martyred. 10 others, mostly children, were wounded after an Israeli bomb was dropped on a house in the camp. Meanwhile, the young boy Mohammed Awad Mura was martyred by an Israeli sniper. This brings the number of martyrs in the Maghazi refugee camp to 14. While more than 100 were wounded, including our colleague, Jabir al-Amsadar, whose hand and face were injured. Another civilian from the Mansour family, an unidentified body, and a large number of women and children were also wounded.
For
the latest updates, our correspondent Sfeer Khalifa joins us on the phone from Al-Maghazi. Sfeer, describe to us the atmosphere in the Maghazi refugee camp right now in the midst of the continuous Israeli aggression.
Yusuf, the situation in Al-Maghazi is very tense. Right now, there is calm as well as caution, particularly in the eastern areas where Israeli tanks have been deployed. Now and then, the tanks will bomb civilian houses and the Israeli machine guns will target civilians directly. Surveillance planes are in the air at all times. Movement at the camp has almost completely came to a stop in anticipation of another round of attacks by Israeli tanks and planes. About 2 hours ago, we witnessed shelling operations from Israeli tanks, and a number of mortar shells landed in the center of a residential complex. Ismail al-Rayan was martyred by one of the shells. 5 others were wounded with various injuries. 2 of them, who were in critical conditions, were transported to Al-Aqsa Hospital for medical treatment. One of the paramedics was also injured while he was trying to move the martyr, Ismail Rayan, whose body was split in half. When the paramedic reached the body, the Israeli occupation forces launched another shell towards the ambulance, delaying the transport of the body to the hospital. In general, Israeli helicopters are hovering over the area. There is almost no movement on the ground because citizens are afraid of missile or mortar shell attacks, like what happened today and what happened yesterday evening when Israeli spy planes launched many missiles at some resistance men. Resistance men are deployed here at the heart of the Maghazi camp. They have been able to stop the Israeli military machinery from advancing deep into Maghazi. Today, the resistance men were able to destroy many Israeli military machines, including 2 bulldozers that were bulldozing 2 homes in the eastern part of the camp.
المغازي ايضا رجال المقاومه في هذا اليوم قاموا باعطاب وتدمير عده اليات عسكريه منها جرافتين اسرائيليتين كانتا تقومان بعمليه تجريف لمنزلين الى الشرق من.
The views expressed on Mosaic are those of the participating broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. Please visit linktv.org/Mosaic for more information about these broadcasters or to view previous Mosaic programs, obtain program transcripts, or receive the weekly Mosaic Intelligence Report. Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation, the Otto Haas Charitable Trust, and by committed Link TV viewers like you. If you value this program, please send your tax-deductible contribution to Link TV, either through the website or the mailing address listed on your screen. This program was brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. television network devoted to global and national news, with uncompromising documentaries and diverse cultural programs which connect you to the world.